Hey y'all, and welcome to Politibrawl. My name is Brian, and Karoline Leavitt just torches this ridiculous New York Times reporter for asking a ludicrous question, and she did it right to his face. Let's dive in.
And to remove public safety threats and violent criminals from our streets. If federal law enforcement, with the help of the Metropolitan Police Department, come across illegal aliens, of course, we are going to abide by this administration's policy of law and order, and we are going to remove illegal criminals from our nation's capital. They will be detained and deported, just like they are in every other community across the country. Kristen.
First question is, whose idea was it to change the next steps from a trilateral to a bilateral meeting?
It was an idea that evolved in the course of the president's conversations with both President Putin, President Zelensky, and the European leaders yesterday. And as you saw, Kristen, with all of those European leaders leaving the White House, including the NATO Secretary General, they all agreed that this is a great first step. And it's a good thing that these two leaders are going to be sitting down together, and the president expects that to happen.
And how long is Trump willing to wait and operate in good faith for Putin to actually arrange a meeting before he intervenes?
Look, the president has put tremendous public pressure to bring this war to a close. He's taken actions, as you've seen, sanctions on India and other actions as well. He's made himself very clear that he wants to see this war end, and he has scoffed at the ideas of others that have been raised that we should wait another month before any meeting takes place. The president wants to move, and he wants to bring this war to an end as quickly as possible.
Just a clarification on something you said earlier about Putin agreeing to the meeting. The Kremlin seemed to indicate that Putin did not firmly agree to a bilateral. Did he agree to have a sit down with just Zelensky on the phone?
I can assure you that the United States government and the Trump administration is working with both Russia and Ukraine to make that bilateral happen as we speak. Sean.
Hey, if the point is to get everybody on the same page, why wouldn't Trump just take the call from Putin while the other leaders were in the room? He said it would be disrespectful to do that. But why is it disrespectful?
With all due respect, only a reporter from the New York Times would ask a question like that, Sean. The president met with all of these European leaders at the White House 48 hours after sitting down with President Putin on American soil. In fact, there was so much progress in the readout that was given to these European leaders immediately following his meeting with President Putin that every single one of them got on a plane 48 hours later and flew to the United States of America. And if I could just read for all of you some of the statements from those European leaders yesterday, you had President Zelensky himself saying it was a very good conversation. It was really good. We spoke about very sensitive points. The Secretary General, Mark Rutte, it was the president, only because of the president, that this deadlock was broken, but with President Putin by starting a dialogue. So these leaders, who this war is in their backyard, are very grateful that the president took that call and that he was there to provide them with a readout of Russia's thinking on this, something that was not done by the previous administration at all.
What a perfectly logical answer to a ridiculously illogical question. Who cares where Donald Trump takes a phone call? Seriously, who cares? As a matter of fact, he showed more respect to all these guys by leaving the room saying, hey, here's a new scoop. What do you think about this? All right, that is literally the idea of the art of the deal, particularly after a high-profile meeting just a couple of days ago when President Putin made an unusual and unprecedented move by coming to the United States during a time of war between his nation and the Ukrainian people. That's an unprecedented move, which tells me that Donald Trump is indeed wanting to get peace done. All right, that's what he cares about. He has talked about this throughout the entire campaign season. Now he's putting his money where his mouth is. This is a good thing. And all of a sudden, the New York Times, which will never give Trump any credit whatsoever, and they'll definitely not treat Karoline Leavitt with the respect she deserves, and they're asking these questions, well, why didn't he take a phone call in another way? Wasn't that disrespectful? There are only a handful of people who think like this. There's a tiny subsection of the Democrat Party that screams the loudest, and they're the rich white liberals that keep on taking the slop and enjoying it. And they've gotten to a point where if you try to wean them off the slop, if you try to tell the person, hey, you are still in Plato's cave, you might want to leave it. The sun's bright, everything's nice out here. Instead of getting the treatment that they need for their TDS, they continue to double, triple, and quadruple down. These people do not understand that not only are they becoming a major minority, but they are also destroying their own credibility. A question like that really means that you are trying to drum up the classic narrative that has not stuck. It is only stuck with these people who continually basically put their brains in VR mode and watch CNN, watch MSNBC, and think that Stephen Colbert is fair and balanced. These people have lost touch with reality, and it's because of questions like this, trying to tie in Vladimir Putin, Donald Trump, and the Russia collusion hoax. They're trying to keep that narrative going because they know it goes gangbusters with their key demographic. But funny, I should mention the words key demographic because the New York Times, like MSNBC and CNN, have been falling in number when it comes to the key demographic. Now, granted, I'm specifically talking about CNN and MSNBC, but just listen to this. In the advertiser-covered 20 to 54 demographic, I think it's 20 to 45, they might have typed it, that might have been a typo, primetime viewership plunged 20% to 91,000 compared to last year, despite anchor star Rachel Maddow returning to full-time duty during the first 100 days of the Trump administration. In other words, they can pull in the best stars for MSNBC, and the best one by far is Rachel Maddow, and that's a low bar. And they can only get in the key demographic 91,000 viewers according to the Nielsen ratings. Uh-oh. That ain't good. That means the kids aren't listening to this slop. That means the adults that are past the key demographic. And that means that they're losing constantly. They're just slowly watching the support just drip away as places like YouTube and, of course, the podcast sphere are starting to take over. And they're actually pretty interesting to watch, don't you think? Because they're covering things in a way that it's easier for you to digest. It's easier for people to either sit down and listen for 2 hours or get a good 15-minute video or so to get them to fully understand an actual issue or an actual topic. CNN, the way cable news works, they try to go in 3 to 5 minute bursts and then get as much advertisements as they can. You can't flesh out an issue like that. And people are starting to realize that. But the funniest thing, in my opinion, is what happens when you have a reporter that actually asks tough questions. Or some anchor on CNN finally says, you know what, enough is enough. Maybe what's going on in D.C. is actually a good thing. What Trump is doing to deploy the National Guard, maybe it is good for our safety. You will get a backlash like you would never believe. Because if anyone gives any credit to President Trump whatsoever, even if the dude cured cancer, they would talk about how much this hurts the pharmaceutical industry because you're shutting off its supply lines. Funny what might be happening. It's interesting to see what RK Jr. is going to be talking about next. But the reality is, these people's minds have been broken. There's the old adage from Ronald Reagan himself, who said basically along the lines of, liberals know so much that isn't so, and to make matters even crazier, they're so open-minded that their brains have just fallen out. That is what has happened here. You get a part of a key demographic of the voting culture, of the people who are the most in tune to politics, and they're out here enjoying drivel, slop, and dumb questions like this. Karoline Leavitt handled this to perfection, just the way Donald Trump is handling these peace negotiations. And furthermore, there are reports that are coming out that says that Europe is now going to be sending money to Ukraine in greater quantities than we could have ever done so on our end. Maybe Europe should pay for the war that they're paranoid about, instead of relying on us time and time again to send them these weapon packages that magically disappear once they reach Ukrainian soil. Remember, Ukraine was considered the most corrupt country in all of Europe, and that was including Russia, if I'm not mistaken, which is also a notoriously corrupt country. But Donald Trump is doing his job. He is trying to facilitate peace. So, of course, he's going to take a phone call. He is going to be as tacit as possible. He is going to be as pleasant as possible dealing with all of these other foreign dignitaries. And instead of focusing on that, the New York Times would rather plant a ridiculous question, and Karoline Leavitt knocked it out of the park. But let me know what you think down in the comments below. My name is Brian. Hope you enjoyed that segment here on Politibrawl. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Catch you on the next one. Until then, y'all have a good one.